vi. Ja. Velkommen til kveldens møte. I dag handler det egentlig om hva som egentlig skjedde under ski-VM. Det var en invitasjon til å invitere folk med inn bak kulissene og gi litt mer informasjon om hvordan vi har jobbet, hva vi kan lære og hva vi kan ta med oss videre. Og så vil vi også gi litt intro til hva som skjer, hva som er neste steg i kampanjen. Men jeg går ut ifra at alle som sitter i Zoom-call i dag, de har fulgt med på en eller annen måte hva som skjedde i Trondheim nå under ski-VM. Enten om dere var til stede i Trondheim, eller om dere var fulgt med fra sidelinjen. Men det var i hvert fall første gang vi i Folk mot Fossilmakta testet åpen organisering. Det vil si at vi var helt åpne om hva aksjonsplanene våre var. Og i hvert fall førsteinntrykket vårt nå er at det har vært egentlig en kjempesuksess. For dette åpnet opp for samtaler rundt fossilsponsing på en helt annen måte enn det vi har sett tidligere. Vi klarte til og med å inngå samarbeid med flere utøvere. Vi fikk 60 forskere i Skandinavia til å stille seg bak kravene vi la frem til arrangøren av ski-VM. Vi fikk til et samarbeid med de som jobber med Fossil Non-Proliferation Treaty, de som jobber da på internasjonalt nivå med å få på plass en utfasningsavtale. Og vi klarte å samle inn 100 000 kroner til å fortsette vårt arbeid. Så vi føler, vi som har jobbet med det litt tettere, vi føler i hvert fall at det har vært veldig mye positivt knyttet til det å være åpen om aksjonsplanene våre. Så det er egentlig det vi skal snakke litt mer i detalj om i dag. Og jeg glemte å introdusere meg selv, men jeg heter i hvert fall Frida, jobber i Folk mot Fossilmakta. Jeg er egentlig utdannet sykepleier, men jobber nå heltid med kampanjen. Og så har jeg med meg Anne Klein i dag. Hun skal fortelle litt om aksjonsplanleggingen, og hvorfor liksom det strategiske valgene med å være åpen rundt aksjonsplaner. Ragnhild som Simonsen, som sitter i Trondheim også, hun har jobbet en del med mediekommunikasjon, med presse. Skal ta oss litt med inn i det arbeidet og hvordan, hva vi opplevde der, og hvilke erfaringer vi gjorde oss. Og så har vi også med oss Calum, skal snakke litt mer om de forhandlingene som fant sted med skiutøverne. Litt hvor vi står i prosessen nå med tanke på videre arbeid i samarbeid med utøverne, og sånn litt generelt veien videre for kampanjen. Og før vi avslutter, så tenkte vi at vi deler oss inn i litt mindre grupper der vi kan komme litt mer i prat med hverandre og høre deres tanker rundt aksjonene. Og så åpner vi opp for spørsmål på slutten av Zoom-callet. Jeg er litt usikker på hvordan vi ligger an med tanke på tid, men vi sparer alle spørsmålene til slutten, og så de som ønsker å bli igjen i Zoom-call etter vi er ferdig for å diskutere mer med oss eller stille oss spørsmål, så er alle velkommen til det. Så da gir jeg første ordet til Anne Kleng.
Yes, hello everyone, good evening. I'm gonna talk in English about this. I'm Anne from the Action Planning Group, and I just want to give you kind of a look behind the scenes of what happened in action planning throughout the last months. But I first want to start with some context. So as we all know, Norway is like a petrostate. Oil is influencing culture, like public institution is influencing how politics and policies are done. There's more people employed to work on a narrative for Equinor than there's representatives in the parliament, so oil talks. Another part of the context is that skiing is a pillar in society. So kids grow up with skiing being sponsored by Equinor, and it's looking at all these events happening around skiing. It's a very nation-building event, and I'm originally from Germany. Like, I couldn't imagine so many German flags on one spot than I saw now during ski-VM. That also became very clear during the 50K race on Saturday, and there were 120,000 people in a city of 200 inhabitants coming to watch this race, which is basically 2% of the country. So it is like it was the event of the year, probably even might have been even bigger than the 17th of May. Also important for the context is that interruptions of skiing races, like cross-country skiing races, have been happening before in Norway. So that has also made our action announcement a way more realistic scenario in the eyes of organizers and the public. And another important factor, obviously, of the context is that the ski jam in Trondheim was part, or not only, but majorly sponsored by Equinor, which is in the end killing the winters, or there's a lot of irony in this connection. I also want to go into some of the action values that we decided on in the action planning group, which are nonviolence, responsibility, respect, proportionality, and openness. And especially, I think the last ones, proportionality and openness, can be really well seen in this in the context of this action. But yeah, so what actually happened in terms of action planning? I think it was pretty clear already in the fall that we would like to do something around ski-VM, whatever that would be. So we basically started with this well of ideas, like, okay, we could do roadblocks, we could do like spraying powder at the finish line, we could, I don't know, disrupt the medal ceremonies, or I don't know. You start with a bunch of ideas. But I went back to our notes and I saw that on the 28th of November, we started, or we mentioned a press conference for the first time in our notes of the meeting. So that was when we kind of started thinking, why don't we just announce that we're gonna do actions in during the ski VM? We then continued to look into the program, basically, and then you have these 10 days of ski VM, and you can basically choose which event do I like the best, or what do I want to disrupt. But we eventually landed on the 50K race of the men on Saturday, the 8th of March. Not really knowing that it would be such a big event and so prestigious. So we were definitely also, impressed, let's say. So open organizing, we talk about it a lot. And I guess I feel like now we made a brand out of open organizing, or like there's a definition for it now, but I think it was also a lot of obviously learning by doing. So, but the main part is definitely that we just said, okay, we're just gonna open and transparent about basically every step we take until we step on the tracks, or potentially step on the tracks. So we announced our action plans at national championships in Gosbu, and where we were even asked by the organizers why we go public about that, or the organizers from these national championships. Yeah. So but it allowed us a lot to also build trust with the police in the end, because it also included being very open with the police about what we did. And actually Ragnhild today received a call from them where they were just ensuring us, it was such a nice collaboration. And I guess she mentioned, nice, thank you for like 5 times in that call. But some considerations why we decided to go public was definitely that it created a massive dilemma for all like the stakeholders or actors involved, and especially the ski VM organizers. It built a lot more legitimacy for our movement, just because fossil sponsorship was already addressed beforehand and not only on the day of the action. It forced also the ski VM organizers to respond to like the media attention that it received, and gave us, or we were able to sustain this media coverage over like the course of several weeks. And it felt very nice also in terms of action planning to be able to prepare like and have time. Calum will also go a bit more into the negotiations with the athletes, but I think I just want to end by saying that this in terms of action planning, this action was definitely less about operational action planning in the terms of which people need to be here, and like do we have enough, or the question was definitely do we have enough vests, but like not less about kind of organizing people to step in a road at this point in time and like doing a lot of this. It was a lot about being super flexible and being reactive, and because basically action planning could change every day depending on what was happening elsewhere. So also a big shout out to the group or to everyone that we were able to actually being so flexible and strategically, just because also we know that there is people who want to follow or who are ready to also show this flexibility. Yeah, Calum will go into the athlete part and how it moved on after. But yeah, I am gonna finish my part about action planning. But yeah, reach out if you want to be part of action planning.
Then to you, Calum.
Cool, thank you. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes basically about kind of how the negotiations with the athletes came about. And luckily enough, we actually have one of the athletes that was involved in those conversations in the Zoom call tonight, Bjorn Sandström. So I'll maybe just like try to ask Bjorn a couple of questions in a few minutes about how the process was, because I think the whole thing was quite interesting, to be honest. So basically, like the negotiations came about because I weirdly enough had a phone call with one of them, James, like a year ago, and we talked about kind of how skiers can use their voice on climate. And so I think like I guess a bit of a seed maybe had been planted in his mind at least for a while about like the need to speak up maybe. And so I had sent him a letter 1 week before the 8th that we tried to get athletes to sign, which was like in support of our demand. And he basically came back to me and said, like, no athlete is going to sign this because like they do not want to be connected to a group that is saying they're going to disrupt the 50K. Like, there's no point in me basically sending this around. So then he came back with another idea, which was, okay, why don't we as athletes kind of come up with our own statement, which is really distancing ourselves from your protest, but is using our voice to speak up about these things that you're trying to get across, because we do think that they're really important. So we said that we were interested, and they said on one condition that we would announce that we wouldn't disrupt the 50K. So we said we were interested in that. And we basically then went into like a period of negotiation that was on the Monday. So it was like the timing was super, super tight. It was quite crazy. We had 2 meetings with 4 athletes, 2 Americans, Bjorn and James, who's British, on the British team. And honestly, it was like, I think a part of being public for us was to try to create a situation where athletes could actually use their voice. Because for us, we really understand that their voices are more important than a disruptive protest. If big athletes are coming out and speaking up against the fossil industry, that's like, it's huge, especially in Norway. So by being public, that was kind of the situation we actually really wanted to create, was to give the platform a bit over to them by having a more long-term story in the media. So it was super interesting that this suddenly was coming about, but at the same time, it was incredibly stressful with the timing, and especially for one of the athletes, Julia. She won the silver medal on like the Tuesday, and like straight after the medal ceremony was like then going in and editing the document that we were kind of the proposal we were trying to come in with and then coming into a meeting with us. And so I have to say I was actually really impressed with like the athletes' commitment to this during probably what was the most important week of their lives. But maybe Bjorn, I can just ask you, like, I remember you saying something in the second meeting that we had, where you kind of said that this was one of the craziest things that you've ever heard of happening at a World Championship. So maybe I'll just ask you to elaborate on that a little bit, if possible.
Yeah, I don't really remember it, but I just remember it was quite ironic that 4 athletes, I was not at World Champs, the other 3 were sitting during the most important week as diplomats, if you can call it that, and also talking about extremely crucial issue for them, of course, where they all are engaged, but they're also, of course, didn't want it to be a protest during the race. But it was just like a lack of commitment from the organizer and a lack of commitment from the entire ski community in Norway to not address this issue earlier because you guys have been, and with you guys, I mean, folket from Fossilmakta, you guys have quite early contacted the organizer with this issue. So the irony was quite surreal. The lack of commitment from the organizer and then how these athletes then step in during their most important week of the year.
I think for us that was what was so interesting with these meetings with the athletes was that it really felt like they were looking at us on the same level. Where the organizers of the VM, we had already been in a negotiation meeting with them in January, and it just really felt like they were looking down on us and just didn't understand what we were trying to say, like whatsoever. They were just saying like, "Oh, we have a bunch of electric buses, so like, what's the problem? You know, like why are you guys complaining about this Equinor sponsorship? Like, we don't. What's the problem?" And I think that was what was so cool about the athletes getting in contact was that it just really felt like they were trying really, really hard to actually understand like where we're coming from and why we would be willing to go to those lengths in order to kind of get this point across. So I think for us, it was just like so kind of important to get that feeling that they were looking at us on the same level. So yeah, I mean the negotiations with the athletes went down to the wire. It was like basically Thursday night where we were kind of then getting the final proposal ready, which was like a letter to go out to the media, which was basically the athletes saying that fossil sponsorship is a really big problem. They're really concerned about it and they want to work with us further to put like a proposal to FIS, which is the International Ski Federation, to basically stop fossil fuel advertising in the future and for FIS to endorse the fossil fuel treaty. And it really wasn't until Friday morning that we were like, okay, like this is happening and we're going to cancel the protest. So it was honestly quite stressful, like not really knowing. And I think the important thing to get across too is like we were really I don't think anyone quite realizes how few people we actually were. I think because we were so public about it and so kind of confident saying like, oh, we're going to block the 50K, I think a lot of people thought we were like 100 people, but we were not. We were like 10 people. And I think this was just like quite an interesting aspect to the whole thing. But it got really nerve-wracking to think that we might have to take action kind of because we knew that it would be sort of really stressful and really difficult to actually do what we said we were going to do. So I think for us, it just was so important with this athlete engagement. And I'm really excited to kind of see what happens like now, where I'm going to talk about what's going on afterwards at the end. But super excited to see how we can work with the athletes further over the next few months.
I just want to add one communicative thing that you said so many times, Calum, that I think was crucial is that we don't want to do a protest. We don't want to do anything at this race except cheer and, have our signs. And you were so clear with that it's the last way out. I think that was really important to get at least some of these athletes to listen and then to find a solution where the race wasn't affected and the issue was clearly lifted in a very democratic and powerful way.
Yeah, I mean that was so important for us kind of was to try to get across the point that like disruption is kind of the last option for us. And it's like this idea of nonviolence and civil resistance it's not all about disruption, and especially when you're trying to work in coalitions and like build support in society. I mean for me personally, like this campaign is we believe in disruption being really important as a theory of change, but I think specifically at this event we knew that it wasn't like the be all and end all. Like it was the way that was going to get our point like high up on the agenda and get us a meeting with the organizers within 1 week, for the athletes to take it seriously and actually sit in the meetings during the champs and sort it out. Like, I don't think they would have done that if we just had a letter or a petition saying like, we don't think philosophy sponsorship is good. So I think disruption was like super crucial to kind of raise the tension enough that people actually took us seriously. But it wasn't like the be all and end all. But yeah, thanks very much, Bjørn, for your input, and obviously being part of the negotiations too. I think also this having Bjørn part of it was also really important, just to like have someone that's been very vocal. Bjørn is the first, like when I was looking into skiers who had like spoken up about Equinor sponsorships, he was the only name that came up. So I was getting in contact quite quickly in January. But I think this was really important for the other skiers to feel confident, you know, to like have another athlete at the same level as them that's like saying this is fine, like what these guys are saying is like it's all right. So yeah, thanks very much. And then I'll pass to Ragnhild to talk a bit about the media and communications work and how we built momentum leading up to March 8th. Thank you.
Yes, takk. Ja, jeg heter Ragnhild, med i kommunikasjonsteamet og har jobbet en del med media og kommunikasjon i denne aksjonsperioden. Og det var jo, siden vi gikk ut offentlig i januar med disse planene, så har det jo vært litt et mediesirkus, og vi har prøvd så godt vi kan å bygge opp en historie som gir mening for folk, og som på en måte kunne gi momentum og legitimitet til kampanjen vår. Og jeg føler vi har gått ganske bra. Det har stort sett vært meg og Frida som har sprunget rundt og gitt intervjuer og snakket med journalister helt siden januar. Og det har vært mye jobb, men har gitt god payoff. Medieinteressen og på en måte samtalen rundt denne aksjonen har jo vært helt enorm siden januar. Og det har aldri vært så mye omtale av bare potensialet for en aksjon, ikke engang en aksjon som har skjedd. Og vi har hatt dekning i nordisk media helt siden vi kom ut og offentliggjorde disse planene. Og i starten så handlet jo denne dekningen i media mest om at vi på en måte skulle sabotere VM, og mange som fordømte aksjonene våre. Etter hvert så kom det masse uttalelser fra skiløpere som sa at dette var dumt og sånne ting. Men lite seriøs journalistikk, spesielt fra norsk side. Men etter hvert så kom det litt flere seriøse journalister på banen, og spesielt fra svenskene og en amerikansk journalist. Og vi følte at det større bildet begynte på en måte å ta form når vi møtte svenske Aftonbladet. Jeg kan sende en link til en artikkel i chatten som de lagde. Så den dagen vi møtte de, så hadde øvelsene under VM blitt utsatt på grunn av dårlige værforhold. Og vi så på en måte, mens jeg og Frida stod i intervju med disse her, så var det på en måte klimakrisen utfoldet seg veldig tydelig foran øynene på alle under VM. Og likevel så var det veldig få som våget å snakke om hoveddriveren og sponsoren bak hele sirkuset, som var fossilindustrien. Og forstyrrende protest fra vår side sto på menyen om bare noen få dager. Og det føltes veldig absurd hvor mye ressurser arrangøren og politiet var villige til å bruke på å holde oss ute. Og heller på en måte bli sabotert av fossilindustrien og klimaendringer. Men det som etter hvert virkelig begynte å skape momentum og endre samtalen fra på en måte bare den overfladiske sabotasje og teite miljøaktivister, det var avtalen som vi begynte å jobbe frem mot sammen med utøvere i dagene som ledde opp mot aksjonen. Og så når vi gikk i dialog og media fant ut av dette, så snudde egentlig samtalen ganske plutselig fra å fremstille oss som sabotører til at vi fikk anerkjennelse fra en del av utøverne som ville jobbe sammen med oss, i bytte med at vi avlyste forstyrrelsen av 5 miler. Og det var dette brevet med en tydelig uttalelse fra utøverne som ble sirkulert rett før aksjonen skulle finne sted, og ble signert av over 30 skiløpere fra flere land. Og det skal presenteres for alle atletene på deres samling om 2 uker, tror jeg, for å prøve å få enda flere med, som er bra. Og alt dette på en måte, utviklingen av historien i media, og det faktum at man har greid å holde oppe på en måte trykket og historien og få momentum så lenge, hadde vi aldri fått til uten å være åpne om planene våre. Og det at vi greide å på en måte bruke sivil ulydighet som et strategisk forhandlingskort som ble tatt på alvor. Og ja, vi føler at vi har fått til litt den balansen mellom å skape på en måte dette drama, som var mest på en måte oppmerksomhet på i starten. Og både å skape det drama, og så til slutt få liksom vinkla kommunikasjonen og oppmerksomheten inn på det som vi egentlig prøvde å kommunisere, og det som hadde lyst til å skape press rundt, som var fossile selskaper sin ødeleggende rolle i klimakrisen, og den på en måte paradoksale plassen som de har i skisporten. Så i ukene som ledet opp mot femmila, så hadde vi god dekning fra internasjonale medier, men relativt overfladisk og litt lite dybde fra norske medier. Og det er først nå i etterkant, etter at hele VM er ferdig, at NRK for eksempel har begynt å ta kontakt og komme på banen og har vist interesse for utfallet. Og det videre arbeidet liksom med utøverne opp mot FIS. Og de norske utøverne var påfallende stille når de ble stilt kritiske spørsmål om fossile selskaper, sin rolle i sporten og klimaendringer. Og ja, jeg vet ikke hvor på en måte, hva kan man si om på en måte den forskjellen mellom engasjementet til norsk media og utenlandsk media. Er det symptomatisk for på en måte den innflytelsen som fossilindustrien har i Norge spesielt? Eller ja, kanskje. I don't know. Men det var litt interessant å på en måte se forskjellen. Men likevel så fikk vi i hvert fall i løpet av disse ukene bygd en historie i media som ga mening for folk, og som opplevde var veldig, veldig viktig, og ga legitimitet til kampanjen vår. Og vi har vist at vi ikke er redde for å bruke forstyrrende sivil ulydighet som et seriøst forhandlingskort, men at vi også faktisk er fornuftige mennesker som ønsker å samarbeide om å skape systematiske endringer, og som ikke er ute etter å forstyrre unødvendig. Så alt i alt så følte vi at kommunikasjonen og historien i media, det ble ganske bra etter hvert. Ja. Det var alt jeg hadde om den saken. Takk for meg.
Takk, Ragnhild. Ja, det var jo litt sånn som vi sa hele veien, at målet vårt er ikke å forstyrre seg selv, men det er jo å åpne opp rommet for viktige samtaler. Og jeg føler jo at denne aksjonsperioden reflekterer jo det aller viktigste vi kan gjøre i dette øyeblikket nå, og det er jo å bygge sterke koalisjoner som sammen kan utfordre fossilindustrien. Så da er jo man avhengig av å samarbeide, men vi ser jo også da, sånn som du sier, forstyrrende protest som en viktig del for at vanlige folk skal kunne komme i en seriøs posisjon da, til å kunne påvirke. Men da er jo det litt sånn, hvor er veien videre? For vi sa jo hele tiden at vi ønsker ikke bare en symbolsk støtteerklæring fra utøverne, men vi ønsker å inngå et samarbeid som faktisk kan bringe frem ekte endring. Så jeg sender den til deg, Calum, for å gi litt mer innblikk i hva vi har faktisk blitt enige om, og hvor vi står nå. Og også hva kampanjen skal jobbe med videre, da, for det er ikke bare opp mot ski-VM og fossilspons vi jobber, men vi har også ganske store andre ambisjoner. Så da får du plukke opp tråden videre der, Calum.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so where are we standing now? I think one of the sort of most important things for us that we were constantly saying to the athletes was that, like, we are not interested in just talking to you for a couple of days over the VM. and then saying bye and not hearing from me ever again. I think the most important thing for us was that we actually do a proper coalition and we work over a longer period of time and actually come with like try to create like a concrete change at the highest level of skiing so that fossil fuel sponsorship can't happen at these kind of big events again. And something that I've thought for a long time is like I think that the political power, or I think FIS, like the International Ski Federation, has quite a lot of political power. No big sports organization has yet endorsed the fossil fuel treaty. And I think if there was to be the first one, then to me it makes very much sense that that should be FIS, because skiing is just a sport that is like so unbelievably impacted by climate change. I mean, we saw it during the VM, we saw it during, or we're seeing it during Holmenkollen, and also this weekend they're having to like change the whole course because there's not enough snow. I just saw another article in NRK now where the biathlon World Cup or something in Poland is like literally just flooding away. Like the athletes said, it's like a joke. They can't even like do the event at all. So definitely, like for us, it's really important that we're working further with the athletes. So basically, our work now is to come with like a common proposal, which we already have, which is like the proposal we made on the Friday, which is going to go before the 56th International Ski Congress of FIS, which is like the international decision-making body for the Ski Federation, on June 13th. And this basically requires like the athletes to propose it as athlete representatives. So this is what we're now going to work on, is like the athletes proposing this as like a thing to go before the FIS meeting. And hopefully also we're going to try to collaborate with some other organizations to like make this a broader thing, because it doesn't strictly, like, we're a civil disobedience, civil resistance campaign. This to me is not like 100% our job. I would say this like diplomatic stuff. So hopefully we'll try to like bring on board some other organizations, like maybe Greenpeace, Protect Our Winters, New Weather Institute in Sweden, for example, and see if other organizations want to come together and kind of push this like together alongside the athletes, because I think this is something that it just can give it a lot more power. But I definitely think for us, it would be so cool to come with something really concrete that we can say like legitimately happened because of just the threat of civil disobedience. I think for us as like a civil disobedience campaign, that's like really, really important going forward. So we're definitely excited to try to work further with that. And I think especially for us, like strategically, as a civil disobedience campaign in Norway, I think this SkiVM action period has been super, super important for us, because now when we're talking about our theory of change, we have like a legit example to use for it working in practice, because it really did work it out in practice. Like the things that we constantly say are leading to concrete change. A lot of these things work just straight up in practice with this action period. People taking us super seriously just by the threat of doing civil disobedience, creating like a long-term, like over many months story in the media, which led to like an actual conversation in society about fossil fuel sponsorship, to the point where Johannes Klebe, who's been like the poster child of Ecuador since he was a kid, was saying after he won the 50K, he said to a journalist that he would be interested to kind of take up the conversation about fossil fuel sponsorship, and he'd be interested to work with it like going into the spring, which is like a few weeks ago, I would just never have imagined that's like even possible that someone like Johannes Klebe would be saying those words. So I think for us, we can like really concretely say that civil disobedience has been super kind of important in the last couple of weeks for opening up that conversation in skiing. But this open organizing has also required an insane amount of capacity from very few people. And I think we also, as a campaign, like have not been that good at integrating new people into like the structures and the working flow. And so this is something that we really have to get better at, so that we're not just like a few people loaded with all of the work, and really try to get more people taking on responsibilities in the campaign. We have been a bit disappointed, I would guess, like at least up until 2 weeks ago, in sort of, it didn't seem like many people in the campaign, like in the signal chats and stuff, were that excited about the SkiVM action. And we've kind of been like super excited about it since January, since we launched it. We've been like, oh my God, this is like the biggest thing ever, like a small group of us who are working with it. But it hasn't really felt like we've managed to spread that excitement super good to the rest of the campaign. And I think that's just like the nature of working as a national campaign. We're always on Zoom. A lot of us are not working in local groups, so we don't have like super close connection to other people. I think this has all led a bit to the fact that it's been hard to build up excitement. And I think it's just like we have to just try to do better. And one of the ways that we think we can maybe do better is by integrating more people into the work and sort of like the idea building earlier on in the process. So it's not just like something that suddenly people come into or see happening and they haven't been involved in it, but that they actually get the chance to be involved in it from like the very beginning. So that's something we're taking quite seriously and like want to try to bring into the next stages of the campaign. So the next stages of the campaign, we have a fairly enormous goal, which is to completely divest the Norwegian oil fund out of fossil fuels. So they invest 700 billion kroner in fossil fuels right now, and we think that's a bit ridiculous. And I think it's definitely possible to push for divestment and push for like a massive conversation in Norwegian society about the oil fund and what they're investing in through the use of sustained civil disobedience. So that's what we're working on now, and this is like going to be a long-term campaign. We didn't really realize how much capacity the ski van would take up. So that's taken up kind of all of our capacity over the last few months, but now we're switching like all of our focus for at least the next like 6 months into the oil fund campaign, and definitely leading up to the election and past the election. We want to try to make it like a big election issue for all of the parties and really try to make us like politically relevant during the election, because I think that's something also we've learned now, that like civil disobedience and disruption is super important, but we also need to show that we actually participate in the democratic process and that we're like politically like relevant. So I'm not going to talk too much about this here because we just don't have time. But if people are interested, we have a document which we've been circling, which is kind of like the strategy for like the next part of the campaign. And so if anyone is interested, just send me a message and I can send it to you. But we're planning to have an action period in Oslo starting on the 28th of April, and that's what we're mobilizing for now. And then it'll be continuing like all through the summer and past the election. It will be trying to put pressure on the oil fund, basically. But yeah, we need people. We really need to try to work better at getting people into the working structures and helping people take on roles and stuff. So yeah, that's like most important thing. So if you're interested, then please just get in touch with like me, Anna, Frida, Ragnhild, any of us, and say that you're interested. Cool. I'll finish up there.
Good, takk Calum. Nå tenkte vi at vi kunne dele oss litt inn i mindre grupper der vi kan snakke litt nærmere sammen. Jeg ser at det er en del nye folk her og litt gamle folk, men jeg har prøvd å dele oss inn i grupperommer. Så vi kommer tilbake her samlet da om 10 minutter. Men da trykker jeg